Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to, what is this today, October 21st, 2020's Coffee Chat. And we're thrilled that you're taking the time today to join us as we're continuing our virtual coffee chats during the global pandemic and COVID-19. It's been one of the plus sides of this is that we've had a lot more participation in coffee chats than we have in the past. It's been exponential in the number of people participating. So today we're looking, like I said, around 150 to 200 folks. And right now we have 83 people in. We'll give that just a couple more seconds before we dive right into all of our information. Thank you for submitting your questions yesterday and submitting them early. We ask that if you have additional questions that you use the Q&A box and not the chat box. It gets hard to keep up with both. So just use the Q&A button, click in there, and we will answer questions as they come in. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And once again, good morning, everyone. I'm Rich Arkanoff, your superintendent. Thank you so much. It's an honor to serve the Center Grove Community School Corporation and this wonderful district and our awesome children and parents and staff. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I greatly appreciate it. With me today is Mr. Jason Taylor, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Technology. And on the side, he oversees health services. We thought that'd be easy for him until 2020. Also with us is Mrs. Nora Hoover, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. So she takes on all of the responsibilities for curriculum and special education and everything that happens in the classroom with our teachers. And then finally, the Master of Ceremonies, the individual who keeps us on track, is our one and only Director of Communications, Mrs. Stacy Conrad. And so she will be taking care of all of the questions today and helping us keep track of answering those questions. So thank you folks for being with us today. We're all in our respective offices running this Zoom webinar. So I wanna jump in today. I'm gonna start by sharing my screen. And I believe we have our presentation ready to go. Of course, I now can't find it. Sorry. Let's see if I can find my presentation. Here it is. And I think I have to refresh because we made some last minute changes to it. And share my screen. There we go. All righty. All right, well, folks, this morning we wanted to start off with something a little bit different today than talking about COVID and virtual learning and all that. We want to start off talking a little bit about the work we've been doing in our cultural and diversity training. We've begun some work on this at the executive level. So when I say executive level, I'm talking about the school board and of course the Superintendent's Advisory Council, which has been looking into what is the best avenue and approach to take with our corporation and our community in addressing this very urgent need of cultural diversity training. So with that, I'd like to just kind of introduce to you an individual that we're beginning to work with. Her name is Dr. Renee Aziz. She comes to us through Virtuoso Education, which is a consulting company that she runs and also has had many, many years of experience helping school corporations through addressing their needs in cultural diversity training. So you can learn more about Dr. Aziz on the Indiana Department of Education's website, as well as her website, where you'll find a lot of ways that Dr. Aziz has helped school corporations. we're beginning the training with her with the school board, and that's happening. They're getting some training actually this week, along with the Superintendent's Advisory Council. We'll be doing some needs assessments across the corporation with her support, and she will help us then determine the best path moving forward on what issues to address that will help us continue to grow and improve as a school corporation, in particularly in making sure that we are responsive and aware of what issues we need to address in regards to cultural and cultural diversity. So with that, as you are listening today and you have questions regarding that, please use the Q&A box down below, and we'd be happy to try and address those questions as well. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are with the COVID-19 response and how we're addressing that, and particularly what are our numbers right now and where we're going and the measures that we're taking. So we've been really concerned about fall break, and so we're watching that. And Mr. Taylor will kind of share with you a little bit of where we're at in those numbers.
Thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. I just want to start by saying we couldn't be happier with the way our students are handling the current pandemic that we're experiencing. It's really their dedication to wearing the face coverings and exercising distance when possible that have really led us to lower numbers, I think, than we anticipated. While we're not 100% thrilled with the situation and the numbers that we have, we know that the spread and the limited spread that we've had in our schools has solely fallen upon our students and our teachers in the classrooms, and making sure that there's the safest environment possible every day for our students. So just wanted to start with that. I think on the next slide, Dr. Arkanoff, if you'd switch over to that one, just want to share a few quick definitions with you folks as we talk today. You might hear us say some words that could be a little confusing. When we talk about isolation, we're talking about someone who is sick or is tested positive with COVID-19. This is an individual who needs to isolate themselves. They may not be a positive test yet. They may just be developing symptoms, or they could be at a positive state and they need to isolate to avoid that spread. Quarantine is someone who's actually come in contact with a positive case. And this could be someone in the household, at the workplace, or even at school. And they need to quarantine, and it's for 14 days, which is typically 10 school days. It varies depending on when the exposure was. But those students need to quarantine. We have folks who are quarantined at school and folks who cannot come to school because they've been quarantined at work or something over the weekend. And then finally, a close contact is someone that we've identified at school was in contact with a positive case and was within that 6-foot bubble, 6-foot radius for more than 15 minutes. And that's a combined 15 minutes throughout the school day. So students who overlap in classes or spend time together in two situations are students that we'd identify as close contacts, and then they would move into that quarantine category. Next slide. Sorry, I must have just brushed the mute button there real quick. I apologize. For our quarantining procedures, when we get notified either by the county health department or a parent or student notifies us that they've tested positive, we have a conversation with that person. That could be a student, it could be a staff member in our situation, because we serve both. We ask them about their close contacts. If it's a student, we also review then their course schedule and look at what classrooms were they in. This goes back to a 48-hour window prior to the positive test. And if they're also not showing symptoms, we talk about when the test was administered and look back. Again, that close contact is someone that's been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. Next slide. And so if, depending on how, no matter how we're notified about it, our health services team under the direction of Amy Norman, who's our health services coordinator, works with the building principals and the administrators in those buildings to review seating charts. They'll also visit classrooms to make sure that the seating chart that we have on file was really accurate for that 48-hour window. That can be a real challenge at the high school where we have a red-white day. or where they might meet for STAR one day a week and not meet the rest of the week. So we have to have those conversations to make sure we're able to identify every student. We do take tape measures around. We try our best to make sure that we only identify the students who have to be identified as a close contact. Sometimes that comes down to a matter of inches. Typically it's more like a foot of distance that kind of makes that determination. But we do look down to that grain level of detail to identify the students. And we don't want to over-identify students. And we try really hard to make sure that we focus just on the students who are truly close contacts. We also look at extracurricular activities and look at interactions there. We talk to the coaches. We will even review game film if necessary. We then have decided as a corporation that we would notify every close contact by phone. That's something we've been able to continue to do the first 10, 11 weeks of school here. We do make a phone call. Sometimes we have to leave voicemails, and we don't like doing that, but we just want to make sure folks hear it from us first, and they have someone to reach back out to if they have questions. After that, we do send out a mass email to let everyone know that there was a positive case in the building. Could be student or staff. We don't identify that. And we also then put notations in Skyward so teachers are aware and they know how to account for those students for attendance and how to prepare them to learn via e-learning if needed. Just looking, we got a couple graphics that kind of show what I was talking about earlier. This is a typical classroom arranged in rows and columns. You can kind of see how the one blue case would impact the one student with the blue colored head there would impact the ones with the orange. And in this case, the teacher's in red and the distance is just enough greater that the teacher wouldn't have had to have been isolated in this situation or quarantined. And then you folks will remember at the secondary schools, we spent 2 weeks at the hybrid, the blended model. And the blended model changes our classroom layout. We're able to spread the students out some more. And you'll see that same classroom in a blended model removes 3 students from being identified as close contacts and would only identify 2 students that were within that 5-foot distance. Okay, next slide. Because of, like I said earlier, the hard work of our teachers and students, we've been able to remain at stage 1 now for the past really 2 months, I guess, October and most of September, where we have all of our schools open. We do look at this every week. Today at noon, the state's going to update the numbers and they're going to update the color codes for the counties throughout the state. We review that as soon as we can on Wednesdays. Last week, we did switch from the blue coloring to the yellow coloring. And we had some conversations about any changes that we needed to be considering. We focus the most, though, on the 7-day average positive rate for Johnson County, the number of COVID-19 positive cases in each of our schools, and then some of those related absences, which fall those 2 groups I talked about earlier, those students who have been isolated or quarantined. We also are constantly monitoring, do we have enough protective equipment for our students and staff? And do we have enough cleaning supplies and products so that we can maintain a healthy, clean school? We use these metrics as we make those decisions to change in any stage. We also are accepting the guidance and looking at the guidance coming from the state and the county with all of this. Just kind of update you some of our numbers on the next slide, Dr. Arkanoff. Ms. Conrad's done a great job of putting these numbers out on a weekly basis, working with Amy Norman to make sure that our community is informed how we're performing in our schools. You'll see we've kind of got a comparison here on what a break in the schedule looks like versus a return. So we were all on fall break last week. And even though we were on break, we did receive cases and notifications that we had positive cases in our schools. Fortunately, most of those fell in that window where when we look back 48 hours, there weren't any school-related close contacts. So that was a positive, and we actually saw our quarantine and isolation numbers go down a little bit. However, as soon as we returned on Monday, we were notified of some cases. We now have 4 at the high school this week, and it's Wednesday morning, and so we could have some more cases. We still are unsure about how many of our folks traveled abroad for fall break, and if they traveled and just returned, it could be a 7 to 10 day window before they really trigger that positive test. Let's look at the next slide real quick. This is something I talked about just a moment ago when I talked about, we've also seen a significant drop in our COVID-related absences. You'll see leading up to fall break, we had 213 students who were either isolated or quarantined. Because of fall break and kind of that 1 week reset, that number dropped, and we began this week at actually 38 cases. It's slowly growing, and we'll report that number at the end of the week. As we have those new cases come in and we contact trace, we do identify students who are close contacts and need to be quarantined. I think that covers most of the health information, Dr. Arkanoff. I'll look for some questions, and I think Ms. Hoover dropped off accidentally, and we're going to go into the academic options next. And there's Nora's back.
Yep, here she's coming in, just
Awesome.
connecting her audio. So there are a few questions there, Jason, if you want to kind of review those, and then we'll come back to you to kind of answer those as we talk about our next piece, which is, and I know this is probably a big hot topic for most folks, and that's the virtual learning and our next steps this semester and next. So Nora, the floor is yours. Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. If you could switch to the next slide. This is one that I think all of our families, especially those who've been in coffee chat, have seen probably every coffee chat. And that is how over the summer we worked to decide what learning would look like this year. And there are two different options. In our virtual, CG virtual, our students are 100% virtual. In our elementary schools, it's a dedicated teacher for a specific class, and there are multiple sections in every grade level. And then our secondary schools, most of our teachers have a section of a course that they teach virtual students. So most of their day is spent with students live in person, and then some of them are learning virtually in a section that the teacher has dedicated time to work with those students. One really tough decision we made this summer was to decide how we were going to deliver virtual instruction. And we decided we wanted our students taught by our teachers. There are a lot of programs out there that align to Indiana standards that we could have, put kids on a program. And while there are some benefits to that, the biggest drawback is we know we have a really rich, rigorous curriculum. And most of those programs we didn't think would be the same as students sitting in our classrooms. We wanted our teachers teaching our curriculum as close to mirroring the classroom as possible. And so that's why we went with our own teachers and not programs. Now, the drawback to that is a couple of things. One is that we had to stabilize enrollment. We couldn't have people switching back and forth because we weren't just putting them on a program or adding them to a class of students if they wanted to go back. Because we redid our schedules to make room for virtual sections and virtual classrooms in elementary. The other is that we needed time to plan for that, which is why we had a deadline in July, a few weeks before school started. And it's also why right now we're asking families to make that decision, because we have to make a lot of changes to schedules, both for students and the actual master schedules and new class lists in the elementary. And we need time to do that. And so that's the biggest drawback, but we've really felt like for our students and our families, the best thing to do is to have our own teachers teaching all of your children, despite those few drawbacks. So that's how our virtual program works. Obviously, our families who are in traditional understand we've been at our secondary schools in all three of those phases. They're on the left. And that is that we have been e-learning for a week, hybrid for, I think, 3, and then in-person learning the rest of that time. And as Jason showed on the page before, we have metrics to decide which phase we're in, and we're constantly monitoring that data.
Thanks, Nora. And also, as we as you're working through this and talking about it, and I'll go to the next slide, which I think is the application process. There's a lot to switching back and forth between virtual and in person for students, and it also comes at an impact on staffing, and having, based on the numbers and having to move staff back and forth if numbers adjust too much. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we need the deadline, and we need people to commit to a certain, whatever decision they make for that length of time. It's not easy to find teachers at this time of year to bring them on board and train them, or, to move them from a virtual environment to a physical environment. And it's costly for everyone involved to hire a teacher or move a teacher from one location to another, even virtually, because of caseloads and the number of students and so forth. So that's a big impact to this decision as well. So as we're anticipating students making decisions, parents making decisions for next semester, we have to be really cognizant of how that's going to impact staffing. So
yes, and Rich, before we move to the deadline, there's another question related to that. One of our parents added, she asked, with rebalancing for second semester, could elementary school children need to switch teachers? And I'm going to say that is a possibility, depending upon how many students want to move out to virtual and how many want to return from virtual to traditional, which is another reason we wanted that extra time, because we know kids need to transition and the teachers need time to meet those new students and start to form a relationship. We're going to have, for some kids, 2 beginning of schools this year. And we have great teachers. Our kids are wonderful. We'll all do fine, but we want to give time for that transition. So it's not just a, hey, new teacher,
Right.
same hallway here we're in, but, or in a virtual classroom, teachers may change. So we want to make sure that there's time for our principals and teachers to plan.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about the application process for folks this go around this second semester.
Sure. So all of our parents received yesterday the email regarding the application for switching if they want to make a change for next semester. So that, and if you didn't get that email, it is posted in Skyward Family Access, so you can get it there too. But there are 2 reasons for people to fill out that application. The first one is they are currently virtual families or have students doing virtual school. And every student in virtual needs to fill out that form, or their parents need to fill that out, because we need to know their decision for next year. Next semester, do they want to stay in virtual for semester 2, starting January 5th, or do they want to move back to the traditional setting? That's the first reason. The second reason is if there are families who are currently having their students attend traditionally and they want to move to the virtual platform, they're putting in a request for that option. And so they'll fill that out, that no, they were not currently virtual, but yes, they want to switch to virtual. So anyone that's traditional and wants to stay traditional, you don't have to fill the form out. It's just for those 2 reasons. Could you go to the next slide, Rich? Please. So the deadline for that is next Monday. We wanted to give families a week, with it going out yesterday, to decide, and especially give them a weekend to have those conversations at home. You would need to complete 1 request per student. So if you have only 1 student changing, you would just do that for them. But if there are multiple students in your family, you'll need to do that with each student, considering both of those reasons on the prior slide. And then we will make all of our, take all of that information and start working with our principals on class sizes and make all the decisions by November 23rd. So by that date, all of our families will know where they're at for next semester. If you're virtual and you want to stay virtual, that's pretty much a guarantee. And we've said that all since the beginning of this. But the spots that open in our virtual program, we will be able to add students to. So those families would know by the 23rd of November.
Awesome. Of course, that's just a reminder on health screening. And Jason, if you want to just take a minute to kind of repeat that again.
Thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. This is more important than ever. As we enter cold and flu season right now, folks, we need to make sure that we're not losing track of these daily screenings that we need to be performing. Of our cases, when we do get a positive case, it is such a relief when we find out that the student stayed home as soon as they were developing symptoms and the parent kept them home. And that has allowed us in a lot of situations when we have a positive case not to identify any close contacts, because the student or parent was able to recognize the symptoms early in the process, remove the student from the learning environment until the test was complete, and we were able to really slow that spread, which is the goal of everything we're doing here. So just again, every morning, check the temperature of your student, ask them about a sore throat, cough or shortness of breath, be aware of nausea, diarrhea, or vomiting, and headaches, and any new loss of smell, taste or smell. These 6 symptoms really are the ones that we switched to in August, and they haven't changed since then. These are the most important ones to keep an eye out for every morning to keep our schools safe and our students in school. If we're ready for some more questions, Dr. Arkanoff, I can answer a couple more here.
I think it might be appropriate. Right now.
You know, we've had a couple questions about students who are on quarantine and whether or not they've actually become sick. And we really can't answer that. We know it's not a huge number, but it's not zero either. We just can't go into, we don't want to compromise anyone's privacy or health concerns, but we know we've had students who have also developed symptoms and then went and gotten a test on their own. The question was, are we tracking all students who are on quarantine? And what we do up front is let them know as soon as you develop any of these symptoms, or if you get a positive case, please let us know. And parents and students have been very good about doing that for us. And we are very confident that the students, when they return, are symptom-free or don't have that positive test. And so we've been able to return the majority of our students back at the end of their quarantine.
Is there another question there, Stacy?
Yeah, a couple questions regarding changing teachers. Nora, could you clarify that a little bit?
Sure. I don't expect that to be the norm. And we don't want to change anyone's teachers. That's just something that's not something that we'd ever want to do. We know the relationships that teachers build and how valuable those are. So we really want to make sure we're keeping that a priority. And that would only be in an extreme case when there's some really imbalanced classes. Like if there is a section of 15 kids in second grade in one building and the other classes were at 25, that might be someplace we balance, but we don't expect and don't think we'll find those kind of imbalances, but we don't want to also think that couldn't happen. So definitely not anything we'd want to do. We would do that though as a last resort in order to balance classes.
Another question about how many people are going to end up that are requesting to move to virtual learning. How many of those will actually be able to do that? Can you talk through, it's a kind of a complicated process.
Sure. And this is something I work on really close with Mr. Taylor, because it's a staffing issue. So not only is it about the classroom and the kids that are sitting in the class, but we have to think of our staff, and we have certain processes we go through when we make changes. And that's something that's Mr. Taylor does in HR. So we work really closely on this. I can't say how many openings, I'm gonna put that in air quotes, openings there will be in virtual. We have a lot of families who want to move back to traditional. It's not what they expected, or they see that it's not best for their children. And they and their children want to get back to school. And to create some normalcy maybe for their family. So we anticipate spots opening. I just can't possibly say what those are because only a fraction of our families have responded at this point. We're going to want to put in every family we can, and we hope that I don't want to deny anyone, but we don't want to not be transparent and say that that's not a possibility.
And I think that's another reason that we're asking the question now is it's going to give us time to try to solve as many individualized problems as we can, or requests as we can. We really felt rushed to start this school year. You know, things changed so fast in July in the state, and we kept pushing that window back to give parents the best chance to give us an idea of their commitment to schooling for the first semester. And you know, really that caused a lot of headaches, and it was a portion of the reason that we delayed the start of the school, is to get all those students arranged and all the class lists together. And we don't want to have to do that again. We want folks to know when they go home for Thanksgiving break what their plans will be 3 school weeks later when we come back after the winter break.
And I would say, you know, at the high school and at the middle school, that was changing a master schedule. And our high school master schedule takes about, they work on that about 6 months out. And they can make small changes, but these were some pretty substantial changes. And our middle schools work on the schedule for 4 months. And so we have great people who help support that process, and they did a wonderful job, but I also know they think they could have done better, and we want to give them time to do it better.
Some other questions regarding second semester and what kind of restrictions and those kinds of things that are still going to be in place. I don't know, Jason, if you want to tackle this one and talk about that. Obviously, we're still going to be wearing masks second semester,
Right,
as far as we know. If you want to talk about that.
No, you're exactly right. We are going off of today's restrictions and the recommendations from the state. I believe, 6 months ago, I believe that it would probably continue through most of the winter. I think our latest increase in cases probably predicts that could be true, and that our schooling will look very similar in January as it does today. Now, if that continues to increase greatly, then we'd make some changes, but those attending school restrictions wouldn't change. There will still be face coverings. We will still spread students out. We will still limit some activities to be safe. What we don't know is what are the new restrictions or guidelines that the state would recommend to us if cases continue to grow, or positive cases. So that's the part we can't predict. All we can say is that what school looks like today is hopefully what it'll look like in January. And while students are at school, it's probably definitely what it'll look like.
I see a couple questions on there if you want me to answer. A parent asked, if we end up going back on hybrid at the high school, would they consider going to red and white days versus all pink days as we would in our traditional schedule? And this is a great question, and it's one the high school themselves are wrestling with. There are advantages and disadvantages to both of those types of schedules. And I know some of our high schoolers, on a block schedule, you get a lot of homework each day, but only from 3 or 4 classes. And when you had 7, I think the teachers and students both struggled with how much work should be given and what should come from each class. And so I think that got better, but I understand why that's something our parents don't and students don't want to continue. The bad side, though, of going to that block, teachers would only see their students once a week. And they really worry about that, because some of the best things that happen in the classroom or in teaching are what teachers can see students doing in the classroom. Watching them figure out math problems and knowing right away what they're doing wrong, or seeing that they do it right and are ready to move to the next thing. So that face-to-face contact is really important to helping students. And by not having that twice a week and having just a longer period once a week, it really makes what kids are doing independently on their own a little trickier. And so again, we're trying to figure out what's best, and our high school administrators are working with our high school teachers and getting a lot of input. And we will figure that out. We've even talked about a hybrid where we'd have some weeks where they'd be pink, and then we'd have some blocks so we can get labs in science classes and some of those classes that would benefit from the longer time. So we'll continue to investigate that to do what's best for student learning.
Thank you, Nora. So we had a couple of other questions coming in here. I know some of them are a little bit opinion driven, and I wanted to make some clarification on this. There's a lot of questions at the high school about social distancing and what we're doing and are we doing everything we can? And, the answer to that is we're doing everything that we can within reason. We said from the get-go that we were doing in-person education was a priority and that we'll make every attempt that we can to social distance. However, it is in-person education, and there will be times where students will be less than 6 feet apart, and it might happen a lot. And that's why we said that we have the virtual program. Now, there have been comments made that teachers aren't allowing students to social distance. And, the case may be, for example, in a science lab where a teacher might say, we need to pull you all together around this table to work on something. That's part of in-person learning. So I want to just clarify that teachers are doing what they can. And students are, that are choosing to do in person, parents and students need to realize we're not guaranteeing that social distancing will happen at every opportunity in the school. And particularly going to lunch, even though the high school's done a wonderful job of spreading out all the way into the Hall of Excellence, students still sit together. They take their masks off, obviously, to eat, and there are risks there as well. And throughout the entire day, there are risks. So that's part of the in-person learning. And while folks might be a little bit critical of how we're doing that, I just want you to know that, our staff is working really hard to continue making that in-person learning the priority and doing what they can in order to provide students with the opportunity to social distance. Also, too, it doesn't matter if a student is in an extracurricular. It doesn't matter if a student is in some extra program of any kind. Every student is important. Every student has the same thing to lose if they are put on quarantine or isolation. I want that to be clear. We don't make exceptions for anyone. We don't go out of our way to find out an extra inch or two for anyone, any individual. Everyone is treated the same. So that I just want to make sure that that is clear, that Jason and his team work independent of anyone else and identifying the students that need to be quarantined. And we don't look at whether they play on the football team or they're a swimmer or a basketball player or anything. We treat everyone equally, and every student has a lot to lose, whether they play a sport, they're in the band, or they just have a job after school, taking care of their family, taking care of themselves. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And I do want to compliment all of our schools on their continued effort to make sure that they're doing what they can for social distancing. And remember, it's on our kids as well. They have the opportunities to make decisions on what to do to social distance. So I just wanted to share that. I think some more questions are coming in. I don't know if there's ones that you would like to address, Nora or Jason.
Yeah, I have a couple. A parent asked about the elementary school protocol for students coming back live. And again, our principals were working on that transition and what that looks like and how we can welcome students back to our buildings in person. They'll know their teachers once in November 23rd, when families know for sure what's going to happen next year. Shortly after that, I would say by early December, our principals will have new class lists out. So the in-person students coming back from virtual would know who their teachers are, and we'll offer some things to help those families, not only the students, but the families transition back. There was another question about going hybrid. They've asked about if teachers can teach the kids in class and via a camera simultaneously. And what I'll say is, as our secondary schools move to the hybrid model, we've done a lot of research over the summer, and there are several ways to teach effectively in a hybrid model. And we offered for our teachers, four that we thought were really effective and practical for our students and the best learning, are good for our teachers and the best learning we could give to our students. And our teachers have those four designs on how to teach that. And one of them is they could stream students in live. However, there are four others that are very effective too. There's some where you flip the classroom, where you do certain things where kids are in person so that they can go off and do other things more independently. So the teachers are choosing which of those models, those lesson plan frameworks they want to use. And many of them are using a variety based on what they're teaching, and the topics go better with different models than others. So it is certainly an option. You know, there's also tons of research coming out right now, because right now we're living in a petri dish. And so there's a lot of research, and there's, you know, we're paying attention to that too and trying to respond to that research. And if we find something is way better than everything else, we're going to try to move to that. We haven't found that one thing, including cameras in classrooms with kids at home and in person at the same time, we haven't found that that has a significantly greater impact than any other way of doing it. So again, that's why we're offering our teachers 4 models in which to plan that instruction.
Thank you, Nora. Did we get all that answered there?
The other, yeah, there was another about supply lists, and that would, you know, that would be something, those are, if they're not still posted online from the fall, we would repost those for second semester for students coming back to traditional. I think that's it.
Thank you. One of our questions is about why can't we stay on the blended schedule? The short answer to that is that, you know, we asked the community at the beginning of the year what was the most important. The most important one was in person as much as possible. We believe that to be the most important piece of providing instruction. And so with that became the prioritization of doing in person every day and trying to keep as normal of a schedule for our students, our staff, and our parents. So the number one goal is to try and be fully in person. So we only use the blended model in the event we need to slow down a spread or stop it in some way. But at first, we always try to go forth and make sure that we can have a full schedule, because the most important thing, what we do is provide education for students, and to do that directly in person every day as much as possible. It's already, you know, taken such a hit throughout the last year and now this year. Anytime, as much as we can, getting students in front of their teachers as often as possible is critical. And so while we understand some folks would prefer that we had a blended option, we heard from the community that the most important thing was to try and have as normal schedule, as consistent as possible. So hopefully that will help folks understand why that's, you know, one of our priorities. So Jason, do we have more information, or I'm sorry, other questions to answer or anything? Are you good? No? Okay. Nora, any other questions there?
No, I think I have them.
Right. Well, another question came in about, you know, the number of people testing positive. It's really not so much about the number of people testing positive as it is about the number of people that are impacted through the contact tracing. And so while we had, you know, how many people did we have test positive coming back here?
We've had 4 cases.
4 cases.
But, you know, we get reported the cases, the positive test takes a little while before it comes back. And so some of those folks might have been tested last Wednesday or Thursday. Some could have even been Sunday, or in some cases yesterday. But you know, they didn't lead to a vast number of quarantines. We were very pleased. Again, part of that is because they didn't interact with anybody. We were on fall break. So
correct. Correct. And going back to a hybrid, if it's, for some folks might not know this, we had decided as a school board and corporation that we're going to be using our 20% measure, 15 to 20% absentee rate. So right now our numbers are somewhere around 70 total. Is that correct, or am I too high?
Yeah, that'd be about right. And they're spread across multiple buildings, so we're well beyond those thresholds.
Yeah. So if you remember earlier in the year, we spiked pretty fast to 400 or 500, but now we're pretty low. So it would be in that category of one building or the corporation as a whole hitting a 20%, 15 to 20% mark of number of kids being out based on exposure. Okay.
And those metrics are on our website. If you go to the centergrove.k12.in.us/status, you have that map that, or the little, the graphic that Dr. Arkanoff showed earlier. At the very bottom of that page, it lists that 20% may trigger e-learning, 15 to 20% may trigger blended, and then 10% or less stay traditional. Of course, you know, that's a fluid situation, and all of that, along with the other metrics that we're looking at, and in consultation with the Johnson County Health Department, those things could change. But at least we have some guidelines there on that. Right.
And our numbers are posted. I see a question about where can we monitor the absences. Those are posted on our website. Of course, they're after the fact, but Stacy, that's on our, is that linked on our status page as well, or linked into?
Yes, yes. So we post the number of, it's called COVID impact. And once a school building is notified that they have a case, we update that page to say how many cases there are. So you can see it lists every case that we had in all of those weeks since the beginning of school at each building. And then the COVID related absences, we measure at the end of the week. We're tracking that throughout the week, and that changes because, as you know, someone's out for 14 days or 10 days. So we kind of take a snapshot of that at the end of the week for the previous week and post that so everyone can kind of see where we are. So as Jason mentioned earlier, the previous week before break, we were at 213. Last week, it was 38. So, and this week with 4 cases at the high school, luckily, as Jason mentioned, we haven't had a lot of contact tracing with that since some of those people did not come back to school. So that number was 38 last week and hopefully won't be too much higher this week. But all of that is on our website.
Great, thank you, thank you. A couple of things. First of all, a couple of folks have just in the Q&A had said thank you for all your hard work, and we appreciate you. So we thank you for those compliments, and they are doing great. Great things. Our staff and of course my team here doing a really good job, and they're working really hard. I like this question. What are some of the biggest complaints we're getting from teachers, you know, on how we're supporting, how the corporation's is supporting and addressing the needs of teachers? What we're hearing is not necessarily complaints, but more just things that the association, the Teachers Association, we have a great relationship with them, and they bring a lot of the concerns to us, and we work through with them. And what we hear from them mostly is consistency. Try to make decisions and stick with those decisions at length. For example, when we decided to go with the hybrid model, we said we were going to do it for a couple of weeks, and we needed to stick to that. And we worked through that with them to do that. They've also, you know, have said if we're going to stay in person or if we're going to make changes with staffing, that we do that with enough appropriate lead time, hence the deadlines that we've given you in order to do that. Those teachers need the time to plan for that and turn things around. The teachers have been very complimentary of us not having unnecessary meetings and trying to stay focused on just education this year and not really, you know, doing a lot of training in, you know, future planning and things like that, or new teaching strategies. We're staying focused on what we've been doing and just reinforcing those skill sets. So I think the teachers have been really happy with that. That's a lot of the positive feedback that we've been given. We've been really fortunate. The school board has been just so good at keeping us fiscally responsible, that we're able to do a 2% pay raise this year for all of our staff. And so we're excited to be able to do that, especially during this time of uncertainty. We're able to keep moving forward that way. We're just a really fortunate district in the sense that we have a lot of resources. And so when our teachers are asking for things, we're able to get almost everything. I'm not really sure, Jason, nor are there things that you're hearing that maybe we're struggling with? But one of the other things I know that I'm hearing good news on is our cleaning. We came back, took our cleaning back in-house. We were outsourcing it. We took it back last year. And Dr. Long oversees that with our facilities. And I will tell you, our buildings are cleaner than they've ever been. So that's really been impressive. And our teachers have commented on that as well. I don't know if any of you want to jump into that or see another question to answer.
I think our teachers have really risen to the occasion, Dr. Arkanoff. It's been an amazing year. For most of them, this was again starting like a first-year teacher, and they learned how to teach in multiple new methods. I think that the thing I'd say is just remember their moms and dads, their spouses as well, their sons and daughters of parents as well, and keep in mind that all of your concerns and problems they have too. Plus, they also address yours and your students' concerns and problems every day. So, just remember that. Send them a little special thank you note. Cut them a break if it's an extra 3 hours over when they normally respond in a 1 hour period. Just give them some understanding that it's a lot, and they're doing a great job. Couldn't be happier.
That's true. They are getting a ton of emails, and of course, obviously, that's the way to communicate. And it's been really challenging to try and answer all of those emails. I mean, anyone that gets a lot of emails realize you can sit down and be lost in email, heck, for quite a while. So, Nora, did you want to say something?
I was just going to echo what you and Jason said. They're under a lot of anxiety. They're thinking about helping students recover academically from what we lost in the spring. And also doing all of the work this year, but also taking care of the students' needs, because our students are having a lot of stress and anxiety. We all are. And the teachers carry that around with them. And so I would say that's just their biggest, it's just this overwhelming sense of day-to-day anxiety because they care so much. And I appreciate that. And I think all 4 of us, maybe at least 3 of us, have students with teachers in our district right now. And I'm seeing how they're going above and beyond. And, but it is hard. It's very hard. Many of them are teaching at secondary, virtual and traditional students. The elementary teachers going all virtual are learning. They're learning a lot. And there'll be great resources if we ever go to e-learning or hybrid in elementary. But it's a whole new world.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate our teachers and hope we are thanking them enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question about the 15% for the school district, 15 to 20%. We have about 8,900 students in the school district. So as a district as a whole, you would use between 15 and 20% of that for the entire district. But each building is how we look at this. So there's roughly around 20, about 2,400 or 2,300 at the high school right now, taking out the virtual students. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we would look at a factor somewhere between 15 and 20% of that number. Mm-hmm. And I want to say with cold and flu season coming up, and this has happened in the past, it may not even be COVID related. It could be just a rash of flu or some other, winter sickness that might drive us up to 20%. And that's why that's a state allowance, if you will, to close a school. Because that's happened in the past over the years where a school might just get, a rash of flus or something like that might close it. And it could be a combination of those 2 things. One thing about question about how are we monitoring kids wearing masks on the bus? And that's a real good challenge. Number one thing our bus drivers need to do is drive the bus and be safe. and get the kids to and from school. So it's pretty hard to drive a bus and monitor the students via the mirror. And we really depend on the kids to do the right thing. So is it inconsistent? Absolutely, it's inconsistent because it's hard to monitor kids wearing that all the time. And we have all different ages on the bus, from the little ladies and gentlemen in kindergarten and first grade who wear the mask all sorts of different and creative ways, to our older kids who might just not want to wear their mask on the bus there. So bus drivers do the best they can, but that is a challenging task to ensure that students are wearing their masks while they're driving a bus. So again, I just appreciate all the work that they're doing there. Our bus drivers are really working hard, and we're always in need of bus drivers. So if any of you would like to pick up some extra dollars and come down and apply for bus driving, that would be fantastic, because we're short right now, and we'll take more bus drivers if we can get them. With that being said, also too, our food service department's doing an amazing job. Thanks to the federal government, we've been able to provide free meals for the remainder of this. Is it till December, or is it till the end of the year? I forget.
End of the year. It's been
Yeah,
extended
right.
all the way through the end of the school year, if the money holds out.
Yeah, so that's fantastic for our families to be able, to provide that. But more importantly, it's really helped with our food services, because what a lot of people don't understand is that's a completely self-funded, self-driven organization. Everything they do is based on what they bring in financially through meals, and they run a very tight budget to hire people, bring them in, train them, have them serve folks, and then be able to keep it's like running a restaurant, if you will, with a lot of folks. And it's also on very limited hours. So most of the people that work in food services work part-time, and finding part-time employees is a very difficult task, but she's been doing an awesome job. Shannon Maples is our director of food services. Her and her team just knock it out of the park, continuing to keep things going. So I just want to make a comment and appreciate them as well. We have a question about IEP meetings. Are they still going to be doing these? Absolutely. Federal law requires those. We do those via Zoom when possible, and also too, we'll do those in person if need be, taking appropriate precautions and spreading folks out in larger rooms if need be. Nor is there anything else on that particular topic that we should answer or address? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
They'll probably continue to be virtual until we change that. We'll make that decision December 1st on second semester, whether we'll be having visitors back in school, IEP meetings, all of those things. So if there's a first semester case conference or IEP meeting, it is more than likely going to be virtual. But our families are doing a great job, and our teachers, with still making those meaningful collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The next question was, can you tell us how teachers feel about virtual school? Is it going, how's it going, and so forth? Good feedback and all of that. And I think there's kind of ups and downs on that. You want to talk about that a little bit, Nora?
Sure. I think the first few weeks, a couple of weeks, were tough for our elementary teachers. It's really K through 6 where we have dedicated teachers who are just virtual teachers. And learning new things and new ways to structure and engage students, excuse me, was challenging. Like Jason said, it's like being a first-year teacher all over again in many respects. But our coordinator of connected learning, Katie Brennan, and her team have worked just nonstop with these teachers to train and support and provide resources, working with the families. And I think we have some teachers who are loving it. They are making connections with kids. One of the great things is, in the in-person classroom, small groups are really hard right now. And some of that one-on-one instruction we would do, we can't do those for sustained lengths of time. Our virtual teachers can, because they can pull kids in and have small groups and do some instructional things that we're limited on in other ways. So they're really finding great workarounds. And I think overall, we have a lot of happy teachers. And I hope I've seen some parents in there adding some comments. I think we have some really happy parents too. Definitely a lot of people making the best of the situation. And there may be some outliers, but I really think it's going well.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, we had a nice compliment in the Q&A on the virtual teachers. So thank you very much for that, sharing out that they feel very, very good about their experience. And, you know, I tell folks all the time, I mean, virtual experience can be a lot like in-person experience. You know, sometimes you have, you know, good experience and sometimes you don't. Just depends on what's going on. But the most important thing, and we say this all the time, you know, we're all about providing exceptional educational experiences. And the only way we're continuing to get better is if you reach out and tell us what's working and what's not working. And you always want to start with your teacher. Start right with the source of who's providing that resource to you or that service to you. And let them know if they're hitting the mark or not. If they're not hitting the mark, let them know. And they want to do better. And that instant feedback will help them. And, you know, what I've learned with our staff is they love that, they want that, and they adjust and improve based on that. Another good question here is, you know, are the middle schools, do they have to be linked to the high school when we're talking about closures and or the hybrid model? Partially that has to do with logistics. So when you're talking about transportation, you're talking about some of the more curriculum issues that take place across the middle schools and the high schools because we have shared staff and that. So there's several issues, but Nora, you want to talk a little bit about the shared staff impact on middle schools and high schools?
Sure. We have a lot of our students, especially 8th graders, who take high school classes for credit. And while some of those are taught in their building, like Spanish courses, many others aren't taught. They're taught in the high school by high school teachers. So that's one of the logistical concerns. We also have some other specific positions, particularly in music, where our middle schools are supported by high school teachers. And so we have to think about all of that. I know the one thing we've talked over and over again is that it doesn't necessarily, high school situation doesn't necessarily have to be linked to middle school situation. And we would make those calls based on the metrics that we've determined. And early on last year, in the spring, I think we would go more case by case, middle school versus high school.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, it is 9:06, so we are 6 minutes over our start time or end time, but we really appreciate all of you taking the time this morning to tune in and listen to us and submit your questions. Keep those coming in. You don't have to always wait for a coffee chat. You can email us. Stacy, where can they email us conveniently? Would they? What's the best email?
Sure. There's an easier one to remember. It's info@centergrove.k12.in.us. And that one we can forward on to whomever needs to see it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, we'll probably have a coffee chat coming up in the next few weeks. We'll get that info out, and we'll probably do that before Thanksgiving break. Let's all stay healthy, and let's make it to Thanksgiving break. So thank you again. Everyone take care and have a great week.